Hello and welcome to the Fighting Spirit Podcast. As always, I'm Jason and I'm here to bring you your fight picks for our upcoming event, UFC 238, where Henry Cejudo will be taking on Marlon Moraes for the vacant Bantamweight Championship. Also, we have Valentina Shevchenko taking on Jessica Eye for the Ladies Flyweight Championship, and we have the People's Fight, Tony Ferguson taking on Donald Cowboy Cerrone. This is a jam-packed card. Let's get into it. All fights are crunched. Now here's the show. In our main event of the evening, we will have Henry the Messenger Cejudo taking on Marlon Magic Moraes. And this is going to be an excellent bout for the vacant Bantamweight Championship, no doubt about it. We have the Messenger Cejudo coming off a great fight win streak with wins over Wilson Rees, Sergio Pettis, Demetrius Johnson, and TJ Dillashaw. However, these are all 125-pound bouts where we have Marlon Moraes coming off a similar amazing win streak with John Dodson, Aljamain Sterling, Jimmy Rivera, and Rafael Assunção. Most of those being finished via KO or submission. So we've really got an excellent bout ahead of us. We have two juggernauts of the lower weight divisions colliding here. However, let's talk about how I see this playing out. So if you guys can remember, quite a long time ago, we had Demetrius Johnson take on Dominic Cruz several years ago before the Reebok days. We saw basically a natural 125er take on a relatively large but still very much in the meat of things, bantamweight. And I think that's how we're actually going to see this play out. Henry Cejudo might be 10 times the athlete Moraes, but I think we're going to see size play a factor here. Marlon Moraes isn't the biggest bantamweight at 5'6", but I think he's going to have that larger frame, and I think he's actually going to be able to hang with Cejudo. Let's talk about how I think he's going to hang, though. When we look at striking ability, I actually think that Marlon Moraes has a little bit better technical game. Henry Cejudo might have a little bit better pressure, but I think that Marlon Moraes is just a little bit more skilled tactician, and he's able to be a little more rangy. Like, Henry Cejudo is a very deep pressure fighter. He's going to come after Marlon. He's going to try to take away that range, but I think Marlon's footwork is going to be superior here to Cejudo's. Cejudo, if he can, pressure that grappling game, score some takedowns, and stay on top, I think has a distinct advantage here over Moraes, Olympic gold medalist, right? The guy only tests positive for gold, and I can see that being a factor. However, he has no submissions. Submissions are not his game. If he gets it down, he's only going to go for that ground and pound game on Moraes. And Moraes does have 6 submissions, right? He does trade with a Ricardo Almeida at his jiu-jitsu school, and I think he could sneak something in. This guy does have a couple wins via rear naked choke. I can see a transition, a sweep, a pass, something where he can get on the back of Cejudo potentially and take it and choke him out, especially having that larger frame and being able to kind of turn the tables. Either way, though, I think Cejudo is a great fighter. I just think he's punching above his weight class here, no pun intended, and I think we're going to see him get derailed here by Marlon Moraes. We've seen Cejudo have, some tougher fights in the past, with his earlier loss to Demetrius Johnson and even a loss to Joseph Benavidez. Whereas we've seen Moraes, I think, fight stiffer competition the whole way up. The 135 division is packed. When we look back at that 125 division, we had Demetrius Johnson pulverizing everybody until he fought, obviously, Cejudo the second time. When I look over, there's no sleepers at Bantam when you look at Moraes' record. He has that KO over Jimmy Rivera, who's also fighting on this card in another amazing bout with Peter Yan. But a victory over Jimmy Rivera, over Aljamain Sterling, over Assunção. This guy has beat the best that bantamweight has to offer, and I think he's going to add Henry Cejudo to the list. If it stays on the feet, Moraes can extend that range a little bit. I think he's going to be the victor. If Cejudo could potentially pressure and get those takedowns, I can see it maybe going his way. But I ultimately see Cejudo going down here. I think he's going to have a harder time, and I think we're going to see a match much like when Mighty Mouse took on Dominic Cruz back in the day. No matter what that skill set and that athleticism, I think that the bigger man's going to prevail here, and I think he's going to prove that Henry should stay down at 125. We are picking Marlon Moraes in the main event. In our co-main, we will have a ladies flyweight bout for the championship where Valentina Bullet Shevchenko will be taking on Jessica Evil Eye. And this fight, I think, is honestly going to be a little bit lopsided. So we know Jessica Eye is on a great win streak right now. She has 3 wins in a row. However, Shevchenko, you can debate whether she beat Nunes or didn't beat Nunes in her last outing back in September of 2017. But either way, she's basically beaten everybody that this UFC division has to offer, except for Amanda Nunes. And I can see them running this one back, to be perfectly honest, if she can stay on streak, right? But she is taking on Jessica Eye in her next fight, so we can't get too far ahead of ourselves. When I look at the numbers here, I think that Valentina just outclasses Jessica Eye everywhere, and she has that little X factor, which I think is killer instinct. We look at Shevchenko, she has the 4 KOs, 7 submissions. When I look over at Jessica Eye, 3 KOs, 1 submission, and 10 decision fights. She cannot or has a hard time shutting the door for the most part on the fighters that she comes into contact with. Whereas we know that Shevchenko has the heart of a lion. She will reach into Jessica Eye's chest and rip her heart out if necessary. She just has that kind of mindset, that skill set, and I see no love lost here. I think that she is going to be the victor. I think she's bigger, stronger, faster, more aggressive. Basically, you name it, Shevchenko has the edge there, and I do not see Jessica Eye getting it done anywhere, wherever the fight could go. If Eye wants to put her on the mat, Shevchenko has the potential to choke her out. I think if she wants to stay on the feet, Shevchenko has the potential to knock her out. That's the way I see it playing out in this ladies' co-main. In our next bout, call the rock, because we got the people's main event right here taking place in Chicago. We got Tony El Cucuy Ferguson taking on Donald the Cowboy Cerrone, and this is going to be an amazing fight. However, I think Fergie Ferg gonna love you long time here, because I see him picking up the W in Chicago. Let's talk about the numbers. So, Tony Ferguson, I think he's the better striker, and I think he's on par grappling-wise with Cerrone. Obviously, he's more of a scramble fighter than Cerrone. Cerrone is a little more of your traditional kind of BJJ grappler, not like, pressure like Khabib, but a little more traditional, and he will sneak something in on you. Tony is all chaos all the time, whether he's on his feet, if he's on his back, if he's doing rolls to get inverted across the octagon. This guy just brings disruption everywhere that he fights. Now, let's talk about Cerrone, though, and kind of the game plan of Ferguson. So we've seen Ferguson in the past. This guy will come out not necessarily as the slowest starter, but with a lot of pressure pretty early on. And we know Cerrone takes a little while to get going, and I think that could be a little bit of the undoing here for Cerrone. Cerrone has a late start in this contest. I think that this could potentially end in round 1. However, we also know that Tony sometimes doesn't really turn it on until he catches a few to the dome, and he kind of sparks his anger. We saw with that Venata fight, right? And I think maybe it could happen here. I can see it really kind of going either way, but I think Tony has the skill set. Really what we're talking about to determine, I think, this fight is the mentality. Whichever fighter can take that IQ edge and turn it on earlier, I think is going to be the one to win. Now, both of these guys have great will and determination to win. It's just going to be a matter of who has the shorter fuse to light it up and get it going. And one other wild card I want to talk about. So we obviously know that Tony Ferguson did have a victory over Pettis, but he's had some family problems, some mental problems that have come up in the last couple of weeks and months, versus Cerrone, who's just on the dad streak right now. This guy's ready to strap on his New Balances, cut the grass, and crack a beer. That's the way he's playing it right now. And so I think if I had to go solely off of that and not numbers, I probably would pick Cowboy because of the way he's fighting right now. This is the best Cowboy we've ever seen. However, my numbers support Tony Ferguson being basically equal on the ground and a superior striker. I gotta go with him here. I think that Tony Ferguson, El Cucuy, gets it done in Chicago, and he's on his way to meet Khabib to unify the belts. In our next bout, we will have Jimmy El Terror Rivera taking on Peter No Mercy Yan in what would be an amazing fight. I think this guy has the potential to be kind of a dark horse fight. I've been following Peter Yan the entire time he's come up in the UFC, and I think this guy has the skill set to potentially be a bantamweight champion. We'll see what happens here tonight, because I think this could be a setup to fight either the winner of Cejudo and Moraes. Anyhow, let's get into it. So, we look at Jimmy Rivera, we look at Peter Yan. I see very good strikers in both, but I think Rivera's just a little too aggressive and not patient enough to deal with a fighter like Yan. I think Yan has great footwork and great patience. He knows when to turn it on, but he won't go headhunting and he won't go chasing early if he doesn't have to. He's not going to get in a defensive situation where it feels like he has to bang it out. We've seen great discipline from him as a fighter so far. Jimmy Rivera, I think, gets a little too aggressive, and I think that's kind of his undoing. I think he's got a little bit of a hot head when he gets in the octagon. He reminds me a little bit of a Jeremy Stevens in his fight style, and I think that is not going to be a good combination when he goes up against Peter Yan. Also, I think that this fight is more than likely going to stay on the feet. Neither one of these guys has too much grappling experience, just with the 2 submissions for Rivera and the 1 submission for Yan, so I see it primarily staying on the feet. Also, we've seen Rivera take a little bit of a slide recently with losses to Sterling and Moraes. He did pick up a victory over Dodson, but it was a decision victory. He didn't win in any kind of dominating style, and I don't think he's going to have much better luck against Peter Yan. So with that being said, we're picking Yan in Chicago. In our next bout, we'll have Tai Bam Bam Tuivasa taking on Blagoy Baga Ivanov in what will be an amazing fight of the big boys throwing bombs. So we got Tai Tuivasa and Ivanov. And these guys, they really don't throw down too much when it gets to the mat, although Ivanov does have his 6 submissions. I see this thing primarily staying on the feet. In fact, Ivanov doesn't have any submission attempts or takedowns yet in the UFC. Doesn't mean he can't, but he hasn't gone that route so far. So I do see this becoming a stand and bang-like contest, which I think is going to be to Tai Tuivasa's disadvantage. Even though he is a very good striker, I think that Ivanov proved it to be a little bit better boxer, especially with that threat of takedowns that he's had since he's outside of the UFC. He just has yet to, showcase it here. I think when you look at the Dos Santos fight, we saw Tai Tuivasa just get outboxed very handily, whereas we saw Ivanov push it into a decision, loss, but he still took it all the way to the belt. I think he's going to be able to at least do the same to Tuivasa. I think Ivanov here can at least get the decision, and we've seen him get some submissions outside of the UFC. So I think if he wants to get this thing to the ground, he certainly could, and he could potentially get a victory that way and do a more grinding style. We don't have the numbers totally to back it up. I have nothing really in the grappling arena for numbers since it wasn't done in the UFC for Ivanov, but I think it is a potential threat there, and I think that Ivanov is going to pick up the victory in this bout. In our next bout, I believe we will have the winner of this one going on to fight Jessica Andrade for the ladies' 115-pound title, with Tatiana Suarez taking on Nina the Strina Ansarov. I think that this has the potential to be a great fight if it stays standing between the two women. I think that they have very similar hands. We don't have a whole lot of knockouts out of either lady, but we do know that Ansarov's had more opportunities to do it, but she doesn't quite get it done with her hands as much. I think that her output and their accuracy are on par with each other, with a slight edge to Suarez. However, where Suarez takes the dominating effect in this fight is with the ground game. I think if she gets into a grappling contest, her wrestling is going to showcase itself very well against Ansarov and make the work that Gadelha tried to do to Ansarov look a little bit more amateurish. I think that Tatiana Suarez is going to be your next, at least, challenger for the title here. I think that she's going to be able to do things to Ansarov that Gadelha was not able to do, and at her undefeated record, I see her adding an extra W to that column, and I see her being 8-0 when she gets out of the octagon in Chicago. Bantamweight showcase continues, where we'll have Aljamain Funkmaster Sterling taking on a Pedro the Young Punisher Munoz in another great matchup. Let's see how I see this thing playing out. So when I look at the numbers here, these guys are almost dead even. The only thing I'm honestly going to say gives a slight edge to Munoz is that I think he sees a little bit better competition with the sharpening iron down in American Top Team. Nothing at all against the Serra Longo fight camp. Guys like Chris Weidman, Ally Quinta fight out of there. I mean, he has some amazing talent in Long Island, in New York. The guy, Serra and Longo, they run an amazing gym. However, they do not have the breadth and depth of fighters that American Top Team has to offer, and I think we're going to be able to see that when Pedro Munoz puts his game plan up against Aljo. And as far as those game plans go, both of these guys have such high-level takedown defense that I primarily see this fight staying on the feet. Now, it's not to say either one of these guys won't try to score one, and I'm not sure who honestly would nail the first if either one went for it. However, I think this is going to stay on the feet because both of them kind of know that you can get shucked off, and it might not be worth the energy effort to get the other guy to the ground. So I think this is going to stay on the feet, where I think the ranginess of Aljo might be enough to stave off Munoz. I think he's a little bit longer here. However, I think Munoz is such a great pressure fighter. We saw this against Cody Garbrandt, although Cody did kind of throw it away by brawling. I think that Munoz gets it done anyhow. I think that he is the slightly better fighter because of the pressure. I think he's going to be able to close the distance, and I think he's going to be able to get it done. I think that he's slightly better fighter. However, it is very close. Either way, though, we got to pick somebody. We're picking Pedro, the Young Punisher Munoz, in this bout. In our next fight, we will have Karolina Kowalkiewicz taking on Alexa Grasso in what should be a pretty interesting fight. So we have kind of a little more traditional boxer in Grasso taking on a really accomplished Muay Thai kickboxer in Kobelkiewicz. And I think, striking-wise, I think that they are roughly equal when you just look at pure output and accuracy and things of that nature. However, I think the technical ability for Carolina is going to be a little bit higher here. I don't necessarily see this fight going to the ground. Neither fighter really, puts it there. Kobelkiewicz does have the 2 submissions, and Grasso, of course, has none. So I see this thing basically staying on the feet unless somebody tries to gore, like a points takedown. But I ultimately think that Kobelkiewicz is going to have the slightly superior, technical boxing, kickboxing game that I think is going to outdo Grasso here. Now, both fighters are coming off of losses. For Kobelkiewicz, he has 2 losses, one to Watterson, one to Andrade, and we also have Grasso losing to Suarez in her last outing. So both fighters are looking to pick, win back up on their record and kind of carry forward their careers. But I do ultimately see Kobelkiewicz getting it done here. I like her better in Chicago. In our next bout, we will have Ricardo, the Bully Lamas, taking on Calvin, the Boston finisher Cater, in what will be a great fight at 145 pounds. So when I look here again at the numbers, I believe that these guys are relatively close when it comes to the feet, but I do see Cater having a slightly better ability to shut the door on guys. So we got Ricardo Lamas 19-7, 6 KOs. We got Cater 19-3 with 8 KOs. He's getting it done a little more often, and he's never been knocked out himself, whereas Lamas has taken 4 KOs. He's 37 years of age. He's taken a few too many miles on him at this point, and I think Cater's going to be able to get the job done. He came off that great victory over Chris Fishgold back in October via TKO punches, 4 minutes, 11 seconds into the first round. I think this guy is hot. I think he was only slightly derailed by Renato Carnino. And I think he's going to be able to pick up his winning ways against a salty veteran like Lamas, who has been, kind of up and down lately, right? He had that win over Darren Elkins, but he also had back-to-back losses before that against Mirsad Bektic and Josh Emmett. The numbers do support, though, one way Ricardo can get the win here, and that's if he gets this fight to the ground. I think he is the slightly better grappler here. At least he was, in the, previous parts of his career. At his current age, though, I'm not sure he still necessarily has it. However, those skills do hang with you. It's like riding a bicycle. If he gets it on the ground, he can pick up a submission very handily. I like his submission abilities. However, I don't necessarily see him being able to impose that will upon Cater, so I see Cater picking up the W in this bout. In our next bout, we will have a ladies matchup where Xiaonan Furian will be taking on Angela Overkill Hill. And finally, I'm happy that Angela Hill's numbers do not come out on top because I have called her and only been successful 1 out of 3 times. So we are picking Yan in this fight. Let's talk about why. Is not going to be looking to point fight, much like I think that Angela Hill mostly looks to do. I think she looks for a lot of output. She tries to connect with a lot of point shots. I think Yan has a higher fight IQ. I think she has a little more speed. I think that she's going to be able to get inside and put a little bit of damage onto Angela Hill. Angela Hill does have that wrestling background that she could lean on, but she doesn't really demonstrate it all that much when she gets into the octagon, so I don't see it being a factor here. I see Yan being able to get better power shots in, having a better footwork, better speed. I see her being a little bit better everywhere, and I see the Chinese fighter here coming out on top and making a name for herself in what will be her first big bout in the UFC against Angela Hill. So we are picking Yan in this fight. In our next middleweight matchup, we will have Bevan Lewis taking on Darren Stewart in what should be a pretty decent fight. So Bevan Lewis fights out of Jackson Wink. He's relatively unknown in the UFC. Only has 1 fight with a loss to Uriah Hall and had a great victory against Alton Cunningham in the Dana White Contender Series. We haven't seen too much of him yet here, but I always like those Jackson Wink fighters. I think they have a great camp there. And he's going up against a guy that's kind of bounced around a little bit in Darren Stewart. He's had lost to Edmund Shmezy in his last outing via split decision. He did get 2 wins previous to that, but then he had a string of losses before that. He's an up and down fighter. He's streaky, and when I look at the numbers here, I don't think he has the best hands. He doesn't really have much of a grappling game to speak of. He only has knockouts to his records, no submissions. Same goes for Lewis with his 3 knockouts, but I think he has better output, better power, and I see him getting the job done here, so we are picking Bevan Lewis in this bout. In our next fight, we have one of my favorite female fighters out there, JoJo Calderwood, taking on Catelyn, blonde fighter, Shakagan. And this is going to be a very good fight. We've had Calderwood, she's working on her grappling. She's working on her boxing. She's getting better. She's fighting up a TriStar. And I really think that she's going to make a mark for herself with this win over Catlin, as I'm calling it. I think that Catlin has, decent hands and a little bit of ground game, nothing to write home about, but I think that Joanne Calderwood is still getting better. Whereas I think we've seen kind of the best of Catlin. I think we have not yet seen the best of JoJo. I like her rival at TriStar. I think she's getting really good. I think her boxing is great. I think her grappling is improving. I think that she is the better fighter here. I see her getting it done. And like I talk about game plan, Jim, all the time, I think she has the superior fight Jim here to build a game plan to take out a fighter like Catlin. So I do like Joanne Calderwood in this fight. And then in our last fight, we'll have a debuting fight. We'll have Eddie Wineland taking on Grigory Popov. And in this one, not a whole lot of information to go off of. But for what I do have, I do like Popov in this event. So we are picking him in the prelims in Chicago. All right, so that does it for UFC 238 fight picks. Let's go over them one more time to recap. We have Moraes, Shevchenko, Ferguson, Yan, Ivanov, Suarez, Munoz, Kobalkevich, Cater, Yan. This is now Jian Yan from China taking on Angela Hill, and then Lewis, Calderwood, and Popov. Those are our picks for UFC 238. Which now brings me on to housekeeping. I do not have any emails, but I would love to have them. Questions, comments. You know the email, but I'm going to say it one more time, every time. fightingspiritpodcast@gmail.com. That's where you can get in touch with the show. However, you can also get in touch with us on Facebook, like the page. You can get in touch with us on Twitter as well. So the Fighting Spirit Podcast is on Twitter. So get at my handle, follow me. I post a little bit of information there. Want some feedback, just let me know. And we'll get to those. It's pretty much an open book. So MMA, whatever you want to talk about, I'm open to it. Lay it on me. Also, we're on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're on Google Play Music. And we're also on YouTube. So all of those platforms are now carrying the Fighting Spirit Podcast. So you can get us really anywhere you want us to be. Please go there. And for YouTube, like my videos, subscribe to the channel. Try to help me out a little bit. Maybe, I don't have a sponsor for this. Maybe if we can get enough subscribers, we can eventually get to a monetization point, and I'll actually get a little bit back for my time here, which I would not be against in the least. All right, I'm rambling a bit. I'll be back with the retrospective on Sunday for UFC 238. We got one hell of a card here. I haven't picked a stacked card like this in a very long time, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. This one will be well worth the $60. Sign up for ESPN Plus, get behind that paywall they've set up, and buy this contest. This is going to be an amazing, amazing stacked card. All right, I'll talk to you again on Sunday, like I said. Until then, happy fight picking.